Today, we're going to be talking about how you can be near Jesus and still far from peace. Near Jesus, but far from peace. How many of you have a younger sibling? And how many of you know that that's the favorite? That is, for some of us, the older kid, we look at the younger one, and we're like, they always get away with everything. Like, they just have all the preferential treatment. And, you know, when you're growing up, they had certain laws and restrictions and guidelines and curfews, and then the younger one comes, and it's a free-for-all. And you just sit there, and you're like, I ain't never got any of that. You know, like you look at them, you're like, I had to be home at 9 o'clock. Now they're out to midnight. Or I always had chores to do. Now I'm doing their chores. And growing up with a younger sibling sometimes can be controversial. And sometimes it could have a little conflict as you go along. And in this story we're going to read today, we're going to talk about these two sisters. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us directly which woman's the oldest sister, but I'm a pretty good study, and I believe the oldest sister in this story is Martha. Mary is the younger one. A couple of indicators. It says that they were at Martha's house, so therefore I believe she's an older sister. And also, just by the way she acts in the story, I feel like she's the older sister. And what we find out is that Jesus comes into this city called Bethany. Bethany is in between Jerusalem and Judea. It's kind of one of his favorite stopping points in his travels. And he liked to spend time at Martha's house. This is also the sister of Lazarus, which I'm sure you're familiar with Lazarus, the man he raised from the dead. This is all his family. And what we're going to see today is we're going to see two sisters, two responses, and two heart conditions mentioned in this story that I hope will help us, that maybe we feel that we can relate to maybe at least one of these sisters in this story. Now, if you have your hand out, we're just going to jump right into it. I want us to talk about the posture of the sisters. So I want to talk about where they're at in this story. And I'm going to start off with Mary, the attentive Mary. It tells us in this story in verse 39, it says, she had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. She sat at his feet. That's the Greek word parakathizo, which means to sit down and to come near. Now, in the first century, in this culture, this sitting, when you see people sitting in this culture, it was more than them just reclining. Usually when it uses this word, parakathizo, it's in relation to different actions. You would have rabbis that would sit down to teach. You would have disciples who sat down to learn. You would have judges that sat to render verdicts. Or it could be a sitting to rest. But usually in one of four contexts, you would find it related to a judge, a rabbi, a student, or for rest. And to sit at the feet of someone was usually in the context of a disciple sitting at the feet of a rabbi. They're sitting there to learn. In fact, you can read about this in Acts chapter 22 and verse 3. He says, I am verily a man, which am a Jew. This is Paul talking. He says, I'm born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, yet brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel. Gamaliel was a rabbi, a very respected and renowned rabbi in that time. He sat at the feet of Gamaliel and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers and was zealous towards God, as you are all this day. So this posture of sitting at the feet is a posture of humility. It's a posture of submission. It's also an eagerness. You're there to learn. You're there to take in all that's being spoken. Now, sitting at the feet of the rabbi is not unusual in this culture. What is unusual in this story is that it's a woman sitting at the feet of this rabbi. Because this was not culturally, this was not happening at this time. This is what Jesus is doing, is he's breaking down some barriers that have existed because of tradition. And Jesus, he's a rule breaker, but not in a rule breaker as we think. He just hated traditions. People got hung up on traditions. How many of you know that sometimes a church can get hung up on traditions that don't matter? We have our sacred cows. You have churches that, man, they'll fight you over the removal of pews. And it's like, okay, it's this place to sit. But for some reason, pews become sacred. I was interviewing at a church years ago, and I point blank asked them, I said, what's your sacred cow here? That's the question I asked them. What's your sacred cow? They kind of looked at me like I was crazy. We don't have any. I said, nah, don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. What's your sacred cow? I said, if I come here to pastor this church, what can I not do? And literally what they told me I couldn't do was there is an old oak tree behind the church, and it said, it's in our bylaws, we can't cut that tree down. They made an oak tree a sacred cow. They have 20 acres of land, but they were not able to really expand on it because they couldn't cut down a tree. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And so Jesus is really good about cutting through the fluff, and he's getting down to the root of things. So here's Mary, and she's not just sitting near Jesus, she's sitting at his feet to receive what he is teaching in this moment. Now, this is important for us because how much time do we sit at the feet of Jesus to learn from him? In verse 39, it says that she heard his word. Heard his word. And it says that that word, heard his word, is the Greek for listening. It's more than just hearing, it's to listen. Some of us might have been guilty of this as a kid, where your mother said, hey, make sure you take the chicken out of the freezer and thaw it out before I get home so we have something to eat for dinner. And you're like, okay, Mom. And then you hear her car pull up in the parking lot and your blood goes cold because you have forgotten to take the chicken out of the freezer. So now you're in desperation mode, trying to thaw it out in a sink or in a microwave or whatever you can do. And she comes in the door and she sees this frozen ice brick of a chicken on the counter. And she says, you hear me, but you just don't listen. There's a difference between hearing and listening, and what Mary is doing in this moment is she is listening. She's soaking it in. So let's paint the picture. You have sweet little baby sister Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, a place of honor, a place of humility, historically only reserved for men. Now she's in a place where she's welcomed because of Jesus breaking down these barriers. And now here she is being taught by him, soaking it in, living it out. Now we go from the attentive Mary to the aggravated Martha. Look at verse 40. But Martha. You know, anytime the word but happens, when something, I've learned this, when anything good is happening in Scripture, and then you see the word but, usually what happens after that is not good. So you have Mary sitting there listening to Jesus, but Martha was cumbered about much serving and came to him and said, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Bid her, therefore, that she help me. It says Martha is cumbered. That word means distracted or busy. It is a Greek word, means to drag all around. It means she's being dragged around from one place to the other. She is being divided on all of her loyalty. She wants to do this. She needs to do this. She's simply, what it means is she's overtaken with busyness. It depicts a preoccupation that diverts her attention from things that really matter to things that don't matter as much. Martha was busy, and she had a house full of guests, and she had all these things she had to do. I don't know. I'm not going to say my wife is this way. But maybe you have a wife that's this way. That if you have guests that are coming over, what must a house be? Clean. You're up there sweeping the attic. You don't even know why you're up there. She's like, we got guests coming. We have to have our house look like we don't live here. Telling the kids, go clean their room. And the kids are like, they're not going in my room. Like, I don't care. Clean your room. You know, and us husbands, what do? We go outside and pressure wash. We, for whatever reason, we get distracted by other things. But this is Martha in this moment. She has people coming over, and she's like, we got to get the house ready. And she's going around, and she's doing the dishes. She's doing everything. Now, let's make it clear. Jesus really loved Mary, but Jesus also really loved Martha. And we're about to see these two different sisters have two completely interpretations about what is important to Jesus. Two different interpretations. Jesus loved both of them, but you're going to see two different interpretations about what it meant for them to love Jesus. And so Martha is there serving. She's busy. The word service is the word diakono, which is where we get the English word deacon. It means ministry. It means service. She's ministering. She is serving others. She's doing what she can to help out. And the word is derived from the word that means to run errands. So she is absolutely busy doing things for other people. She's doing a good thing. Can we agree she's doing a good thing? She's doing a kind thing, but her heart attitude in this moment is kind of twisted. She's doing the right thing, but for the wrong motive. She's not serving from a place of worship. She's serving from a place of obligation. She's serving from a place that is selfish in a way as well, as we see kind of in her response. So she's slaving, she's serving, she's doing all this, and she just keeps on glancing over at baby sister, just sitting there, and is eating her up inside. She's over there trying to get everything ready, and baby sister is just sitting there. And it gets to the point she can't take it no more. She's had enough. And in verse 40, it says, and she came to him and said, Lord, does not thou care that my sister has left me alone to serve alone? Bid her, therefore, that she come and help me. So Mary sitting on the floor at Jesus' feet. Martha is now standing at his side. Again, he's teaching. And we have to imply that he's not just teaching Mary, but there's his disciples there. And we know that anytime Jesus goes anywhere, there's always another flood of people who come. So we can assume that there's a house full of people. He's sitting there teaching. Martha comes in and interrupts what he's doing to get mad at what is happening in the situation. And it says that she approached him, came to him. This word literally means to assault. In other words, she's not just, excuse me, Jesus? Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you help No, she's like, hey, Jesus. Hey, listen, you see what she's doing? And she is angry. This is a violent approach. Both are wanting something from Jesus. Mary's wanting a relationship. Martha wants recognition. Both have totally different heart attitudes in this moment. And so Martha comes in an aggressive manner. She's angry. She's frustrated. She didn't care what Mary was doing. All she cared about was what Mary wasn't doing. She's not helping. She says in verse 40, do you not care? She interrupts Jesus and says, don't you care? You know why she's upset? She's upset because Jesus ain't upset. Jesus wasn't matching her energy. And so, some of us married folk know what that's like. When your wife or husband comes home, I'm going to look this way. And they come home and they start telling you about something that happened at work. You're not going to believe Jennifer showed up again today 15 minutes late. This is the third day in a row she showed up 15 minutes late. I don't even know why she works there. I tell you, she don't even do her job. I think she's just there because she's pretty and the boss likes her. I don't even. And you're just listening and you're like, okay, just do your job and you'll be okay. That's not what they want to hear. They want you to match their energy. They want you to be equally mad at Jennifer for not doing her job. And you're like, I knew she was trouble. I knew it when I saw her. She was going to be an issue, But the moment you don't match her energy, then all of a sudden now she becomes mad at you. And for some reason, you end up apologizing. It's some kind of like relationship Common Core math. I don't know how it works. But somehow in the middle of it, you end up apologizing for something you didn't even do just because you didn't get equally as mad as she did. So this was happening. Martha comes to Jesus and says, don't you care? And she gets upset because he doesn't match her energy about why she cares about. And he's like, what are you talking about? She feels betrayed. She feels wrong. She feels entitled to retribution and recognition. And she's frustrated that Jesus is not standing up on her behalf. And in verse 40, does thou not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Again, there's that word serve again, diakono, which means ministry or service. The context, again, is a house full of people. There's a lot to be done. There's food to be prepared. There's dishes to be collected and cleaned. There's drink to be passed out and cups to be filled. There's stuff happening. Jesus is speaking to a large crowd. Is what Martha doing bad? No. Is what Martha is doing good? Yes. Is what Martha is doing the most important thing in that moment? No. What Martha is doing is noble. It is needed. But what happens is that we can make serving others more about us than it is about Jesus. And we assume, here's where we get dangerous. We assume serving Jesus equals devotion to Jesus. And we get really busy doing things for Jesus, and we get really busy doing things in ministry, and we confuse busyness for holiness. And a lot of people end up getting hurt, getting wrecked, getting burned out in ministry because they're doing things for Jesus, but they're not sitting at his feet. And I'm going to be honest with you, I know several pastors, myself included, that over the years, man, we are doing a lot of the Lord's work. And we're busy doing things for him. But at the same time, you can be very far from him. At the same time, you can have a successful ministry and be far from the Lord. You can have a growing church and be far from the Lord. You can be a vibrant Sunday school teacher. You can have a life group full of people. You can get up here and sing the roof down, serving him. But you're confusing busyness with holiness. And Martha is over there. She's busy, and she's doing all this, yet her lazy, no good sister sitting at his feet. And you know what this shows me? It shows me that there are going to be times where it's important to serve and to minister, but there's also going to be times where it's important to just sit and be still and to just soak in. There's a balance. There has to be a balance, because if all you do is sit and soak, then you're not doing anything. But if all you're doing is being busy, then you're not growing. So there has to be a balance of I'm serving the Lord, but I'm also at his feet growing in the Lord, and you have to find that balance. Service should never eclipse devotion, because your devotion will always result in service. The more you're devoted to Christ, the more you want to serve him. It feeds into each other. They're shaking hands. It's not one is better than the other. They're both needed, but we have to find the balance. We have to know which is important in the moment. Listening to the Lord will always precede the labor for the Lord. See, here's what I've realized is that the enemy will not always destroy you with sin. Sometimes the enemy will just distract you with busyness. And you become busy doing things in the name of the Lord, but spiritually you are dying. And we substitute intimacy for service, not realizing that many times it's like being on a treadmill. You're doing a lot. You just ain't getting nowhere. You're doing a lot, but you ain't getting nowhere. What do you think if I got up here and I preached, and I didn't spend any time with the Lord that week, and I wasn't in his word, and I wasn't praying and seeking his face? What do you think would happen? I would have a great speech without any power. You can do a lot of things in your own power. You can do a lot of effective things in your own ability, but it won't have the touch of God on it. I desperately need and desire and look for the anointing on my life, because I can come up here. I can do a lot of great things in my own power. I've been doing this long enough. This is my 21st year of ministry. I figured the ministry game out. I can do a lot of this on my own, but there is power in his presence that I need in order to have his touch on my life. That way everything that happens matters, not for me, but for him. And there's a lot of people who get distracted, just getting busy doing stuff, thinking it's in the name of Jesus. So devotion must come before service, or your service will destroy your devotion. They have to go hand in hand. In verse 40, Martha says, "My sister has left me to serve alone. Bid her, therefore, that she help me." Martha wants a co-laborer. She wants a co-worker, not because she wanted help, but because she wanted validation. She wanted vindication. If I'm working, she better be working too. That's how it goes. I can't be the only one. She needs to be helping me. And then we see the root of worry. The root of worry. That's your next point. Jesus, in verse 41, identifies the problem. He identifies the problem of what's happening in her life. Verse 41, "And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things." He says, you are careful. Jesus kindly rebukes her. This phrase, careful, means you are distracted. You are divided. It's like you're in this constant battle. Maybe y'all can relate to this. You're in this constant battle within yourself that you know you're upset about something, but at the same time, you know you shouldn't be upset about it. Ever been there? You're like, I'm angry. and I know it's stupid to be angry about this, but I just can't help it. And he's like, I'm worrying about this, and I know I shouldn't be worrying about it, but it's all I can think about. Anybody can relate to that? We get upset about some things that we know, like this is not a big deal, but I just can't quit thinking about it, and you stew on it, and you become consumed with it. It's all you think about, yet you don't want to think about. This is what worry is like. Worry is being torn into two pieces. And he's looking at Martha and says, Martha, you're being ripped in half right now. Her mind is occupied on this. And Jesus is pinpointing what is happening in Martha's heart right now. He's calling it out. He's like, hey, you're feeling anxious. You're feeling distracted. You're feeling worried because you want to be doing what your sister's doing. And you're mad at your sister because she's doing it and you're not. And you know it's dumb that you're mad at your sister because really, in truth, you want to be where she's at. And you're upset about that. You are conflicted. But she's over here and she knows she wants to be there, but at the same time, she knows there's other things to be doing. And so she's upset about this whole situation. And then Jesus now exposes the condition in her life in verse 41. It says, and Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things. The word trouble means there's noise, riot, turmoil. This is just noise happening. But I love what he says. He says, Martha, Martha. He calls her name twice. And this only happens 7 times in Scripture. Do you find a place where God calls somebody's name twice? There are only 7 times in all of Scripture where somebody's name is mentioned twice. And every time a person's name is mentioned twice, it's always God calling them into relationship. So he does this with Abraham. He does this with Simon. He does this with several other people, and it's all because he's trying to call them into relationship with himself. But she's anxious, and she's mad, and she's frustrated, and she just can't help it. And everything she's doing in this moment, I believe, is exaggerated. Have you ever been a kid growing up, and your mom gets up, starts cleaning on Saturday, and you sit there and you watch your cartoons or whatever it is, and everything she does is an exaggerated movement? The dishwasher, blam! She gets the pans, bang, 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 bang. Somehow she even folds the laundry loud. She's like, and she's just over there. And she's doing all these exaggerated movements. She wants the whole house to know, I'm in here cleaning. And this, I believe, is what Martha is doing. She's in there frustrated. She's angry. Why don't these lazy kids do anything around this house? Why does my lazy husband just sit there and watch TV? It's human. Why is it human nature that if I clean, you have to clean too? Why is that human? It's human nature. You better be doing something too if I'm doing something. And this is why she says in verse 40, tell my sister to help me. She's anxious. She's angry. Mary's not helping. And I'll be a dead woman if I sit here and help and she don't do nothing. Now, let me give you a couple of things about what serving is not. So sometimes we confuse that a need is a calling. Let me say this. A need does not always merit a calling. Just because there's something to do doesn't mean you're called to do that thing. There's too many people who are just helpers by nature, and they're excited to do stuff, and so when a need comes up, they're the first ones to volunteer to fill that need. But a need doesn't always merit a calling. You'll find needs in the church all the time. We always have a need for people, but if you hate kids, I don't want you serving in the kids' ministry. We don't need you back there. We have a need, but we don't need you. A need doesn't always merit a calling. And I've known many young preachers that get called into the ministry, and they're excited about ministry. And a church down the road hears about this, and they give them a phone call and say, hey, we need a youth pastor, or we need an interim pastor, or we need somebody, and they jump at the opportunity to go into ministry, even though wise counsel told them, don't do it. Slow down. This may not be for you. But they're so anxious to help, so willing to help that they jump into it, and they end up making a bad decision. They ignore all the red flags. They saw the need, therefore they say, this must be a call from God. And they go into the ministry, they commit themselves to that need, and then a week, months down the road, They are worn out, they are burned out, they are overextended, and they are mentally, physically, and emotionally drained because they stepped into a need without having the calling. They are sometimes they don't even go back into ministry because of that issue. And so a need doesn't always merit a calling. And secondly, let me say this, a good thing doesn't always mean it's a God thing. Just because it's a good thing to do doesn't mean it's the God thing to do. What Martha was doing was a good thing. We have concluded that what she was doing was good. She's helping others. She's serving others. She's ministering to others. But in that moment, that was not the most important thing for her to be doing. What the most important thing for her to be doing was be sitting at the feet of Jesus. And we can use a lot of reasons to justify what we're doing. And we have to be careful that we don't settle for a good thing when there's something better. A good thing does not always mean a God thing. And notice that when you're doing something for God, but it's not what God called you to do, all it does is it causes anxiety and stress and internal conflict. This is exactly what's happened. Nobody told Martha to clean the house. Nobody told Martha to fix meals. She took it upon herself. And when she did that, she wanted recognition and validation. She wanted somebody to get vengeance for her. Listen, Martha, nobody told you to do that. You took it upon yourself. It was a good thing, but now you're anxious because you did something that was good, but not of God. So I want you to see this, the clarity of Christ's command. The clarity of Christ's command. In verse 42, it says, "But one thing is needful, and Mary has chosen that good part, which shall not be taken from her." There's one thing that's needful. He's redirecting Martha. Again, everything she's doing is good, but don't settle for good. He said, hey, listen, the most important thing you could be doing right now is what your sister's doing. Hey, Martha, listen. Your companionship means more to me than your cooking. I want you more than I want your food. All right? Like, you are more important to me than what you can do for me. He says, one thing is needful, and he says, Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Look, he says the word chosen. The word chosen. In other words, both of them had a decision to make. Mary chose the good thing. Martha chose the bad thing. In life, you will have the decision. You will have the option to choose what you want to do. You have the option to do the good thing or the wrong thing. You have options. Mary chose to sit at his feet. Martha chose to busy herself. And we have to be careful that the decisions we make don't move us further from God, but closer to him. You can choose to be still and get close, or you can choose to busy yourself with the cares of this life. And you and I, let me just say this is one of those tweetable moments. You and I are as close to God as we choose to be. You're as close to God as you choose to be. And we come up with all these reasons on why we're not as close to God as we want to be. Man, life is just crazy right now. I've been pulling doubles at work, and my son has travel ball, and I got work, we got school, I got farm chores, I just got married, I got baseball practice, I got, and we feel justified with our busyness, but Jesus says, but there's one thing that's needful. All this stuff is okay, but there's one thing you need to really prioritize. And the one thing you need to prioritize is the one thing you ain't doing, sitting still in my presence. You're busy doing stuff that really won't matter in eternity. He says this thing that she chose, that Mary chose, will not be taken away from her. In other words, this has eternal importance. Martha, the thing you do, it has temporary importance. And again, we're as close to God as we choose to be. I'm reminded of the old story of a farmer who'd been married 40 years with his bride. 40 years they've been together, and they're going into town one day in his old pickup truck that they used to drive around when they was dating. And as they're going into town, his wife looks over at him and says, you remember back when we was dating? We'd be sitting right next to each other. Now look at us. I'm on one side, you're on the other. And after a minute or two, the husband looks at her and says, well, I never moved. Can we be honest? In our relationship with the Lord, if you say, man, I remember when I was closer to him, who moved? Who moved? It wasn't him. Sometimes our busyness pulls us away from him. And he says in verse 42, one thing is needful, and Mary has chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Again, he's contrasting the temporary from the permanent. What Martha did was temporary. Guess what? The house is going to get dirty again. Guess what? People are going to get hungry again. They're going to get thirsty again. The dishes will become dirty again. Like, what you're doing now, Martha, is good, but it's temporary. What Mary's doing, sitting at my feet, soaking in the words of life, learning from me, being discipled from me. This, what she chose, is permanent. What you chose is temporary. And we need to be careful not to prioritize temporary things in our life over the eternal things of our life. If you could spend 5 minutes at the feet of Jesus, what would you talk about? If you could spend 5 minutes at the feet of Jesus, what kind of conversation would you have? And I'm sure in your mind right now, you're trying to think, what would I ask? What do I say? Oh, I got some cool questions I'd ask him. What would I say? Can I just be honest with you? You can spend 5 minutes at the feet of Jesus anytime you want to. Anytime you want to. See, in our mind, we think about him being this physical place you have to get to, but really he says that when I go, I'm going to send the Comforter. He'll abide in you and with you. The same Spirit that rose Jesus from the dead, the same Spirit lives in you. In other words, you have instant access to Christ anytime you want to. You can spend 5 minutes at his feet anytime you want to. You can talk to him any moment you want to. You can ask him the hard questions of life anytime you want to. So what are you prioritizing? There are 2 words in this story that are only used here in all of Scripture in the original Greek. It is the word to describe Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, and it is the word that's used to describe Martha in her worry. And in this house, what you see, it's amazing. In this house, you see worship and worry coexisting. Jesus is in the middle of it, yet you see one that's worrying and you see one that's worshiping. And in verse 41, he answers, says, Martha, Martha. He calls her name twice, calling her into relationship. Hey, slow down, focus. You're troubled and angry and worried. You're divided. And you're like thinking, Andrew, I don't understand, like, how does this change her? Him calling her into relationship. I mean, you said that calling her name twice and 7 times in Scripture when he calls a name by twice, that's a call into relationship. I understand that, but how does this have an effect on her? Because we never see her sit down again. We don't see her at his feet in this story. How does this change her heart and her posture? In John chapter 12, Jesus takes another trip back to Martha's house. And this is after Jesus has raised her brother Lazarus back to life. And now they're sitting in the house together again. And it's going to be a very similar situation. You're going to see they're very similar in what's happening. John chapter 12, verse 1 through 3. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. There they made him a supper. And Martha served. You see that? Underline that. Martha served. What's she doing again? She's cooking. She's cleaning. She's helping. She's serving. But Lazarus is one of them that sat at the table with him. So everybody else is sitting around hanging out. Lazarus is kicked back. They're talking about what happened. You know, they're sharing the stories of his resurrection, coming back to life. They're just sitting back reclined. And then here comes baby sister, verse 3. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, which is basically an expensive perfume, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Lazarus is kicked back. No doubt they're talking about what happened, and then we see Martha serving, and then comes little Mary into the situation, and she's at his feet again. Do you see? It's a similar situation. You see it? Something's different. Something has shifted. Something's not like it was in the first story. Same story, different outcome. Martha's not anxious. Martha's not loud. Martha's not annoyed. Martha's not angry. Martha's not wanting Jesus to match her energy. Something happened. Same home, same situation, different Martha. What changed? Jesus called her name. He called her into relationship. He calmed her anxious mind, told her to slow down, prioritize what's most important. In Luke chapter 10, Martha was self-centered. In John chapter 12, Martha is God-centered. Totally different. In Luke chapter 10, Martha is loud. In John chapter 12, Martha is now quiet. Here's what I've learned. When you serve the Lord for his purposes, it calms you. When you serve the Lord for your purposes, it stresses you. In the original story, we read, she's serving the Lord, but it's for her purpose. Now we get to John chapter 12, and she's serving the Lord, but it's for his purpose. She learned from devotion how to serve. Remember, devotion encourages your service, but your service will rob you of your devotion. You have to have devotion before you can serve. Now she's someone who's devoted to him, and now her service looks different. Y'all seeing this? It looks different now. So what do I do with this? How do I apply this to my life? I got a few things I want you to fill in as we go. A few things on how we can apply this to our life. They're not alliterated. They're not fancy. It's just very simple. Busyness is not the same thing as fruitfulness. Busyness is not the same thing as fruitfulness. Martha was busy, but Mary was blessed. She was busy, Mary was fruitful. This is the difference. You can fill your schedule and still have an empty soul. Busyness is not fruitfulness. You can stay exhausted and still stay stuck. Busy does not mean blessed. Sometimes busy just means distracted. Number two, serving Jesus is never a substitute for sitting with Jesus. Here's the reality. Sometimes serving him is easier than sitting with him. Sometimes serving him is a lot easier than just sitting with him. And we can come to church and we can have a ministry and we can plug in and we can do all these things, but then when it comes to our personal devotion time with him, it's like we can never find time. And we find out that serving him is a lot easier than sitting with him. This is the trap that Martha fell into. She assumed that serving him was the same as sitting with him, and that's not the truth. A lot of us do the same thing. We go to church, we have a ministry, we post Bible verses on our Facebook page, we do all this stuff, and we do all the right things, but you can be active in ministry and be absent in intimacy. You can be active in ministry and absent from intimacy. Don't get busy doing something that doesn't matter. Number three, if your service makes you bitter, then your heart is off. If your service makes you bitter, your heart is off. If every time you serve, it's just like a chore, or if other people get recognized and you don't and it bothers you, that's a heart issue. Let me ask you this. Would you do what you're doing if nobody ever patted you on the back for doing it? Would you do what you're doing if nobody ever shaked your hand and told you thank you? Because that will reveal the heart attitude of why you're doing what you're doing. And some of us, we do it because we want to be recognized or because we want to be celebrated. Martha wasn't mad because she was serving. Martha was mad because she was serving and nobody was recognizing her for it. Jesus, don't you care? She's sitting doing nothing. Nobody's helping me. Don't you care? This is why she was loud. This is why she's stressed. This is why she's keeping score. And this is a warning sign for all of us, because when you serve the Lord, it should produce joy. But when you serve yourself, it produces resentment. Serving the Lord brings joy. Serving yourself brings resentment. If your service is stealing your peace, then something is out of order. Your heart is not right. Number 4, worry is what happens when you try to carry what Jesus never asked you to carry. Again, going back to this, nobody asked Martha to do what she was doing. Nobody asked her to do these things. Jesus said, you're careful and you're troubled, you're distracted. It's splitting you in half. Here's what worry does. Worry will convince you that everything is urgent and therefore nothing is sacred. I just got to get it done. I got to get it done. I got to get it. Okay, this might be urgent, but is it important? This might be something that needs to be done, but it has to be done right now. And you start living like this, where everything is important, everything is urgent, and you're going from place to place to place, thing to thing to thing. You're not slowing down. I have to do everything. I have to fix everything. I have to hold it together. But listen, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I've had to have people in my life slow me down and tell me, Andrew, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You can do everything we're doing, Andrew, but we can't do what you're doing. Let us do our thing. You do what you need to do. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you're capable doesn't mean it's yours to carry. This is hard for me, y'all. This one right here is hard. I'm a terrible delegator, which is not good in leadership, by the way. But I'm a terrible delegator because I'm just like, I can do it. I can do it. We got a roof leak in the mod. I'm like, I'll do it. We got weeds in the parking lot. I'm out there with a sprayer. We got toilets that leaking. I got it. There's always things to do. And then somebody's like, brother, I got a screwdriver too. You can call me anytime. I'm like, I got it. And then what happens is I get so busy. All right, this is me confess. This is confessional time right now, all right? I get so busy doing things that need to be done, but then at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I didn't spend hardly any time studying for Wednesday night. And the Lord's like, well, who asked you to spray the weeds? I'm like, Dustin. Some of y'all have no idea why that's so funny. But the reality is, sometimes I'm just doing things because they need to be done, but that doesn't mean I'm supposed to be the one doing it. Number 5, you are as close to God as you choose to be. I know we already hit on this one, but this line is probably one of the strongest truths of this whole message. Mary chose to sit, Martha chose to stress. Same house, same Jesus, same opportunity, different choices. And some of you keep saying, I feel far from God. I don't feel close to God. I don't hear him anymore. And it's maybe not because God moved, but because you've never just taken time recently to just sit down, to calm yourself. And so maybe some of the reasons you feel so tired is because you've been trying to live a life without ever sitting at the feet of Jesus. And today, the invitation is simple. Jesus is inviting you to choose the better part. She chose the better thing. And maybe today is an opportunity to say, God, I want to choose the better thing. Not religion, not performance, not stressing, no hustle. I just choose you, and I want to be in your presence. And because I want to learn from you. And here's what I've learned is that what he gives you cannot be taken away from you. And what you do for yourself will eventually come back around. And you'll have to do it again and again. And it's just this endless, you're like a hamster on a wheel. And you're always burdened and always stressed and always worn thin because you're doing things nobody asked you to do. You're serving the Lord for your benefit, not his. And you get anxious and you get tired and you realize, you know what? I haven't sat with him in a minute. And so the invitation is simple. Would you just come and sit at the feet of Jesus for a minute? Would you just get in his presence and just say, God, I'm sorry for getting distracted because you matter most. So I'm going to invite you to stand as we get ready to dismiss. We're going to pray. And again, the invitation is simple. Maybe some of you is like, God, I just need to get close to you again. That's really what revival is, by the way. Revival just means you bring something that is dead back to life. And some of you are just walking spiritual zombies. You just feel dead, far from God. And maybe your heart cries like what David said. David said, restore unto me the joy of thy salvation. Can we just be honest and say sometimes life just gets so busy that sometimes we lose the joy of our salvation? And so maybe our heart cries, God, restore unto me the joy of your salvation.